Okay.
Alrighty, recording starting workshop 7, everyone. Woohoo! For making it this far. Today we are introducing blueprints. Feel free to join my shared screen stream. See a lovely little page of Unreal Engine's documentation introduction to blueprints. We have a few knowledgeable coders here, so they'll probably be correcting me throughout the course of this tutorial, or they'll probably be going way advanced what will be able to achieve me, but it's cool. It's cool. We're curious to see what you guys do come up with. Yeah, I'll share, like always, share all this stuff I'm showing in the chat later on. But we're gonna keep it quite basic for this workshop and the next workshop. At the end of the next, so the next two, this one and the next two are sort of linked together. So at the end of the third one, we are sort of gonna have our character is gonna have a user interface, a health bar, let's say, on the top left hand corner of the screen, and as they overlap with something in the world, fire, ice, whatever, spikes, they get shot, whatever you want to accomplish, they will start to lose health and in the end eventually die, or it might be invincible and never die from the fire. So we'll set up something basic like that, but feel free to explore more advanced features of what blueprints are capable of handling. So I guess when you first installed Unreal Engine, and maybe something I should show you guys for my more curious birds is, why is it so slow? Wow. Okay. When you install Unreal Engine, under the options tab on the launch, I believe, you have all these components that are installed with it. So starter content, it's stuff that we're using, templates and packs if you need them in the future, editor symbols for debugging, damn, that's 79 GB. I'm not too sure what that means. Feel free to explore. Target hardware, if you're not using any of these, I suggest you untick them and apply. It will uninstall them and remove them from cache. Oh, I thought I could find it here, but it's not showing it. I guess under core components, which is required, it installs a program called Visual Studio. So for those who've done gaming courses, you've probably used Visual Studio in the past. And essentially it handles all the back end of all the blueprints that we're doing. But if you wanted to create a project that doesn't have blueprints and it's only based on the Visual Studio code, then you can, when you launch a project, it has the option to select blueprints or I think C++ only. So feel free to, and we'll see once we get into the functions into Unreal, we'll see what happens when we double click one. It can open Visual Studio on the side and show you what happens behind the scenes. So I remember in one of the tutorials, Alex wanted to change one of the visualizers in Unreal from a sphere to a box, and essentially through blueprints, I don't think you can achieve that, or through the editor of Unreal, but through the Visual Studio code, you'll probably be able to dive in and see what that does. But proceed with caution, because what you do will save in the whole engine. So maybe make copies and apply the copies. See how you want to play around with it. I will also share all the different types of blueprints and what they do. We'll cover some of the basic ones today, but there is so many to go through. So I'll just share the stuff with you so you guys can have a deeper dive into it. So, basics. Whenever we are programming something, a software, anything, hardware, program, a game, essentially we need to start with the basics. So getting the initial concepts down on a notepad or a sketch or whatever, just to understand what it is that we are trying to achieve, to understand where do we start and sort of where do we end in essentially a flow chart, and then what is considered throughout the whole process. What do we want to achieve? So let's say for our game, we want to. This is a basic example that I've created. Very useful software, by the way, tool, Google Suite. It's called Draw.io. I suggest you look into it. Draw.io. Very, very cool. Draws flowcharts. It's got all very, very nice tools to use. I even edit images in this sometimes, believe it or not. And I just generally drew a very basic flow chart of what we are trying to achieve with our event of when we overlap with the fire or the spikes as a character, when we lose health, what happens generally throughout that whole process. And essentially that's why I chose something quite simple so we can break it down. We start the game, let's say. The event of and this will become a bit more apparent once we dive into the blueprints, but the event will tick, so it will wait for a command to be sent. So once we overlap with a box or a sphere or that particular object, we will burn, and essentially we will lose health whilst burning. If our health reaches 0, we will die, and then we will be brought back to the main menu, or the game will close, we'll reset the game or stuff like that. Meanwhile, if our health is not equal to 0, we'll go back to the overlap and ask it again, is the character overlapping with this object? If it's not, wait for the event tick to begin again, and goes in a loop and just waits constantly for the overlap event to begin, and then triggers the rest of the commands. So I can share this with you as a quick example, but might not be 100% accurate. Maybe we'll break it. We will evolve this as we proceed with the code, and we'll see what sort of functions we might run into that we'll need to add or remove. Now, blueprints in Unreal follow a very similar standard. They are essentially a flowchart, and we treat it as such, which will contain a few standard variables that we use. Numbers, floats, integers, text, maybe some conditions, which are the diamonds in this flowchart. So it can also be quite a complex flowchart. This is something basic, which is very similar to what we will do as well today, maybe a little today, yeah. But then if you want to go crazy, you can get into some very comprehensive blueprints, especially if you're doing material blueprinting as such. Get quite complex. Any questions? Still here? I'm rambling on.
No, all good.
All good? Cool. I recommend getting into the habits of flowcharts in general. They are very, very
I was
yeah.
going to ask about even though I've studied programming in the past, like classes and variables are still like confusing. Is that necessary for blueprints?
Yes, they are. Basically, I should know the analogy of this, to be honest. They are the backbone of the code. Basically, without them, we won't be able to store information basically about that particular object. So let's say we want to our health, let's say, will be a variable. It will be from 0 to 100 or 1000 depending on what we define it is. So that health essentially will be a variable. Our character will be a variable, but they're quite, I guess, straightforward to say in Unreal, but we'll just go through the very basic ones for now. So essentially there'll be integers, which is a number.
Just numbers.
Yeah. A condition, which is basically if it's true or false. so one or the other.
All right.
And we'll see what other ones we use. And the character, which is a character pawn variable. So literally it is what it is, some of them.
All right, then maybe in context it'll finally click.
Particularly this is not my strong point of the workshops as well. I'm not gonna lie. Programming, I've studied computer science for 3 years and didn't follow it afterwards because it was just all very confusing for me in general. That's why I like blueprints, because it was a lot more easy to see the flow of information happening there rather than reading code in a downward sort of way, and finding mistakes and debugging basically what is going wrong. So yeah, we'll make it as straightforward as possible, and if you have any more questions right away, feel free to bother.
All right, thank you.
Right. Milo will be able to answer a lot of our questions actually. We even have to solve the code. Lovely. So basic flowchart, we'll look at this and evolve this as we go. So without further ado, we'll dive into our Unreal Engine project. Hope you guys have it loaded up. Again, I keep changing my layouts depending on what I'm doing, which project I'm working on, so if it doesn't look the same as yours, do not be concerned. Customize it as much as possible. Cool. So back in our level app, where we left off last time is we added some very nice walking animations to our playable characters. OG, I believe Milo's got his ones nailed down, although we're still waiting for a video of it. Please share away. My guy's slow-mo but walking very, very fast. Big strides. Cool. So, gonna enlarge my taskbar here. And blueprints, let me get rid of you. Bye. So, if I right click on my content browser, again you don't have to follow now at the moment, I'm just going to go through some of the basic blueprints and then we'll create one, and I'll click on blueprint class. I am prompted with a very, very nice window, I know it's large, but which actually is very useful because it explains next to it exactly what this blueprint does. And if you need more help, you can open the documentation for that specific blueprint. So these are traditionally the main ones that we will use in our games, but if you need more specific blueprints, classes, then you click the drop down. They are all defined here. So yeah, I mean, we've created some blueprints for smoke particles, some sparks. We create a blueprint for a sky atmosphere. What else should we have here? Controllers, decals, emitters, all sorts. Level sequences, cinematics, lots of different types of blueprints. I will not go through each and every one because they are a lot, but they've got stuff for VR, they've got stuff for AR, inputs, mobile inputs, etc. So I suggest you just have a little look at, whether you're trying to do something specific, whether you can find it here already as blueprint functions, or whether you have to create your own custom ones. And whatever you create will also appear here under all your classes. Minimize that. We're going to close that because we're not concerning at the moment. Just want to show you what that is. So an active blueprint essentially is an object which is placed or spawned anywhere in the world. This is primarily one that we use very, very often in our games because they are essentially ones that can also help us with performance, but also to help us manipulate objects in our level very, very quickly. Now let's say we have let's say example I've been working on recently, an architectural visualization scene. And me, the lemon, I put individual spotlights, which we saw previously, briefly. I put individual spotlights under each of my actual spotlights in the scene, just to give it that nice cone effect. And then every time I have to shift select all the spotlights in the scene, I had to locate them in my folders and change their intensity and all their settings, blah blah blah, individually, etc., etc. Now if I created a blueprint with one spotlight and I attached the blueprint to every single one of my spotlights in the room, I can just change the properties and the settings of the blueprint of my spotlight there, which will change all the other spotlights in the scene at once. So it's quite a nice and easy way to manipulate multiple different objects, especially if you've got hundreds of them laid out in the scene, and you don't want to, you might want to parent some underneath something else, so they might not be essentially visible straight off the eye, but through a blueprint at least you make sure that you've adjusted all of them at the same time, and it makes it much more organized as well. And essentially later on down the line, if you wanted to manipulate that blueprint, so let's say for this architectural visualization scene specifically, I'm going to have a slider bar which changes from daytime to nighttime. So I have all these spotlights. Obviously at daytime I want them at 0, and at nighttime I want them at 1. So I can use a blueprint or even a timer or a slider to tell it, okay, if my slider is at 0, my spotlights are 0. If my slider is at 100, at 1, my spotlights are on 1, which means it's nighttime and they'll come on. So nice and easy way to just by creating one slider, connect to every single light in your environment, and they will adapt all at once. So hence using blueprints to also save you a bit of time later on down the line if you wanted to manipulate that light in any sort of way. Maybe you want to change its intensity. Maybe you want to have a project where you show your client 6, 7, 8 different lighting scenarios to choose from. For whatever reason, maybe in your game you have street lights and they flicker, they come on and off with like a fog effect, and you want to make that looking cool. You can use something like that. Now again, feel free to use your imagination. You can use them for literally anything. A pawn, next one down, as it says, an actor possessed, so it can receive inputs and controls. So basically when we hit play, let me close that down, when we hit play, this is essentially our pawn, our player pawn, and he will receive inputs like WASD to move around, spacebar to jump. So all that logic is behind the code of this character. So when you press W, play this animation, it's all behind this pawn code. So going back to the list, character is a type of pawn. You need to walk around. So I guess pawn is top of the hierarchy. You will need a pawn and a character as well. Player controller is controlling the pawn. So again, this is linked to all that, has a list of all your input mappings. Game mode base is one that we require for every game that we create. That, like it says, it's set of rules and scoring and other facets, like if you're creating a game network with multiplayer, that will essentially be behind the game mode code. And the rest I haven't used much in the past, but feel free to explore. Cool. So, are we ready to create our first blueprint? Although we've looked at them a few in the past, but our first actor blueprint, we'll call it. So, let's create a blueprint folder in our content browser. Call it blueprints. Nice and neat. And inside those folder, we're going to right click and create basic asset blueprint class. Click on actor and call it pit of death. Pit of death. How do you want to name it? Death pit. Fire pit. great ball of fire. Cool. And we're gonna fire it up. Double click it, launch it. And just gonna make things a little bit smaller if it lets me. Close that down. To the sun. Cool. So in here, again, like our 3D world, it's lit. We've got our perspective view, top view, left view. We can split the screen if we wanted to as well. We have a construction script, which we won't get into for this workshops, but most importantly, the one we'll use is this event graph. So at the top taskbar, you've got three layouts. If they're not open and you can't find them, you can find them here under My Blueprints in the under Graphs. So if you double click that, that should launch this event graph. And here we have already some basic functions like event begin play. So when we hit play, we initiate the code. Or event tick is one that we can use for editor blueprints. So sometimes we like to see things happen without having to hit play, and that's a nice way to debug code as well. So you can use event ticks. We might use these anyway for other certain functions, but they're mostly for editor use, for real-time use. And on the left hand side again, under My Blueprints, we will have, we can create macros, different variables, and all the list of our components that are listed here under components will be also visualized there, so we can utilize these components into our code and make them do stuff. Now when I click on this component itself, you can see on the right hand side we've got a few details. The main one actually is this start with tick enabled. So essentially what causes latency to our Unreal Engine editor is all these ticks that are being called all the time by different events. So I haven't played around with this much in the past, but it's a very useful thing to do if your game starts to not perform very well. So essentially this is telling it how many times does this blueprint actor get called in this level. Now if you have 5 or 6 blueprints in your level, might not be worried so much, but if you have 100 blueprints in your level for all sorts of different things, if you're creating a big game, then you might want to reduce the amount of time things are getting called if they're not being used very often in your game, like overlap events, etc., lights flickering, whatever. And cool. So back into our viewport section here. Should I show that first? Yeah, okay, cool. So like we said, for our game we need to be able to create an overlap event. So once our character steps over a certain point in the world, we want something to happen. In this case he's gonna burn. Yikes. Ouch. So maybe Milo can create us a burning animation, so when it does burn it's like hands in the air kind of thing. That'll be fun to integrate. So we need to create essentially first a overlap event. So in order to do that, in Unreal Engine they'll call those points collision boxes or collision spheres. So anything essentially that you want to interact with needs to have a collision box, which essentially has some physics attached to it as well, which is something we can manipulate a lot in the engine. So under components we have a little plus sign here. We're going to click on that and type in collision, and immediately we have box collision, capsule, sphere collision, whatever you want to do, whatever is more realistic. I'm going to hit box, and we're going to give it a nice name just for good practice, because we're now into coding with like very specific names. So we're going to call this fire pit underscore collision, maybe underscore box as well, collision box. Can I spell correctly? I might not be able to spell correctly. Cool. And as soon as I click on Fire Pit Collision box, on the right hand side we have under shape we also have scale, so we can scale it, but because it is a volume, it's a box volume, we can manipulate its size by changing the box extent here. So I'm gonna go for something a little bit bigger, 120 centimeters. It's gonna be a big fire pit. I want to be a mega pit. 70 on the Y and maybe 50 on the Z. A little bit high, but we'll see. We can manipulate that later once we put in the level and see what that does. Now, the good thing with blueprints in editing is, let's say I compile and save this. On the top left hand corner under the actor, you can hit compile and save. Now I can drag this into the level already. So if I drag Pit of Death into the level and place it somewhere. Now when I have my blueprint here on the side, I can also change my, let's say if I want to see the scale now, I want to bring it back down to 30 on my Z. It automatically adjusts in the editor, so it's nice and easy to see stuff in real world and adjust them with your blueprint at the same time. So the beauty of game engines is starting to reveal itself. Cool, so I'm going to keep it at 50, it's almost the same size as that box, nice and high. I'm happy with that. Cool. So feel free to play with the box extents, how big you want your fire pit to be, whether you want it to be small, maybe you want to have plenty of them around, so you want to create a little maze. And because we've enabled starter content in our project, which is a nice place to start, I'll go into the starter content folder and let me dock you to the side to make it easy. And in the starter content, I'm going to get used to using my filter section a little bit here. So under filters, next to the search starter content tab, I'm going to hit blueprint class under Niagara system at the top. Niagara system. And that will enable anything with that's a blueprint in this starter content, and it will come here on the left hand side with blue icon. If I want to disable it, click it, enable it, click it again. Very nice and easy way to navigate. So filters, blueprint class, enable, and you can select by specific blueprints. And in here we have a nice little, if we double click on blueprint underscore effects underscore fire, double click that and go into the viewport. So it's going to be an event graph, go into viewport. We already have a very nice looking fire particle system here provided to us with audio system. We can even burn. Maybe we can add an audio cue to our character to shout next time he's in the fire pit. That stuff we can incorporate. Cool. So we already have a nice little fire pit here, so we're going to utilize this in our blueprint as well. So if we hover over, does it say what it is? Components, particle emitter. So under variables, we can see here variable type in the details. So this is where this stuff is a bit more helpful. Cat is if we hover over p underscore fire component, which is a particle emitter variable, we can hover over the variable type here on the details, and it tells us here that it's a cascade particle system component type. So that means that this is using our cascade code essentially, which is what they use for particle systems in Unreal Engine. So all the variables, even if I click here on fire audio, we can see the variable type here. If we hover over it, it uses an audio component type. So if you scroll through some of these starter content, I guess stuff that's in the folders, you'll be able to explore the different variable types there as well. It's quite handy to get started. So what we are going to do is we're going to nick this. We like nicking free stuff. We're going to keep that open to the side, but we're going to go back to our pit of death, and in here under components we're going to search particle, and we know that it was a Cascade particle system component, not a Niagara one. It's a different system. We'll use Cascade one. And once we've loaded that in, it's going to load in there. Hierarchy, not particularly important for this. They're under the root, so they will both move with the blueprint root component. So I don't have to parent the particle system to the collision box. That's fine. But that is important sometimes with structuring with blueprints, and we'll see it more later on in the character blueprint. So with this particle system clicked, on the right hand side in the details under template, we'll hover over none, and we can choose any one of these particle systems, either smoke, explosion. What's explosion do? Let me hit explosion. Oh, that'll be nice. That explodes once actually. That'll be nice. As soon as he goes over it, maybe it's a mine. As soon as he goes over it, it's like just dead straight away. But that'll be unfair for our character. So I'm going to give him the fire. Give him the fire. Cool. And this is where the event tick stuff becomes apparent. If you have a lot of particle systems and stuff, this is the ticking process time, right? So it's ticking quite fast, so it's very responsive. Just be aware of that. If it starts to lose, if you start to lose a bit of performance, it's probably a lot of these particle systems can be a hinder on that. Cascade particle system also, by the way, if you see the name, has legacy in brackets, so it will probably be reciprocated very, very soon. So Niagara is the new Unreal Engine 5. It was brought in Unreal Engine 4 as well, introduced, but it's more of an Unreal Engine 5 feature. So this is just for context, if you don't see that come up in future tutorials, but still able to use it. Nice. So now we can see straight away, if I move this to the side and close my fire pit, that straight away in my level I have my fire going on. Cool. Nice. So I'll compile that, save that, make sure there's no errors in the code. Nice and lovely. So now if I hit play and I go over this fire pit, nothing's happening. I'm just going over it. I'm overlapping the box, but I haven't told it to do anything just yet. So what we're going to do now is, like our function says, is when we begin overlap, we want it to essentially burn. For now, because we're not going ahead with the next step, which is the widgets we are creating next week, which will be more of the health bar, we're just going to print something on the screen to tell us this is happening. And print strings is something that we're going to use, that you're going to use very often when you first create your games, to be able to know when things are happening when you're interacting with things. So let's say it's a way of debugging your code, and essentially when you're going to package your game at the end, you're going to remove all the print strings because you don't want the end product to have that coming up on the side screen. And for those who are not aware, it's a very useful thing to say, okay, if I overlap this event, tell me on the screen that I've overlapped with it, because if it's not overlapping and I don't know what's happening, it's hard to figure out where in the process it's breaking. So print strings will help us do that. So back into our pit of death. If I select over my collision box under my components here on the left hand side, and I scroll to the details all the way down, I've got these very nice events that I can use straight off the bat, which is very, very helpful. Now what we want to do is find on component begin overlap, which is the second one down, and we want to hit that plus sign next to it. So what that will do is will generate a blueprint for us that will have that function in there. So all the way down in the details under events, or you can just search under details on component begin overlap and hit the plus sign. That will bring you to your event graph, and it will bring this on component begin overlap. Now I think if you double click that, it will open the Visual Script code. Feel free to do that if you want. So what we want to do from here is when we overlap with this, we want it to print a string at the moment to tell us that we've overlapped. So I'm gonna drag out of the main pin here and let go, and I'm gonna type in print string. String basically is text. It's a variable that stores text, and we can store this, create this variable or store it as a text, or we can just manipulate it here. So we're going to say hello world. Actually no, we're going to be more descriptive with it. We're going to say burning. So in there we're just going to write print string burning, and if we click the drop arrow underneath, you can see, by the way, it tells you development only, so only use this when you're developing, not packaging. But you can see here under print screen we have print to screen, we want that enabled. Print to log, we want that enabled. Text color, if you want to see a fancy color, feel free to change that. Nice bright red. And the duration in which the string comes up, I want to keep it maybe for like 4 seconds, so I can see it. It's a bit apparent. So for now we're just going to hit compile and save. Back into our game. If we hit play and I go over the fire pit, you can see on my left hand side it says burning. So every time I overlap with it, I get this burning thing. Burning text pop up on the left hand side of my screen. So that's a good way to tell us that we've overlapped with this box and it's burning. But eventually for the next tutorial we want that string to essentially be our health bar. So when we go over that, we're starting to lose some health. Cool. I guess I wanted to start basics with the blueprints. Any questions still here? We're good? We're on the same page with the burning sensation when we overlap with the box?
Yep, it's all clear.
Ace. Ace. Me? All good?
I missed something, so I can't get the text up when I walk into the box.
Have you got this here in the event graph?
Yeah, I have that. I split the color.
Yeah, color is not necessarily essential as long as you've got print screen enabled.
And then I compiled and saved it.
And is it did you drag and drop it in your level?
Yeah, it's in my level.
Did you put print string or log string?
It's print string.
It's print string. Okay.
And in the
And
string,
then what's the event? What does it say on the red thing? The red box. What does it say?
On component begin overlap. particle system. It doesn't have the fire pit collision box.
Cool.
Okay,
So,
that's the problem.
So if you click, if you go on the left hand side and you click
Yeah.
fire pit collision box
Yeah.
on the particle system, and then under the event graph here in the details, click the plus sign for on component begin overlap for the collision box.
Is this because so on that left side, my particle system
I
Yes.
think you
is
you click.
under. It's under the fire pit collision box. Is it
No, no,
then-
no. I think you
okay.
put. I think you did overlap on the particle system by accident. If you selected the collision box and you press the on overlap, it gives you another event. That's the one that you need to work with instead.
Yeah.
Because the particle system doesn't have a collision, so it doesn't really have a component that it can register as it overlapping.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. So fire event.
Is the
It'd be the
Is what-
second.
is one a child of the other?
Yeah, almost like that. Let me just. What was the cool trick to cut the connection?
Alt
alt
and
click.
click. Yeah.
Right. This is a bit tricky because I put snow in my thing and I'm fine. Oh yes, thanks guys.
Of course, man.
I'm burning.
Is it working now? Perfect.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
burning.
good stuff.
Burning. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got ice, I mean, I would recommend putting freezing. So, play with the with the context there. I'll be funny if you're burning or burning on ice. Cool. So, I guess that was it for this one. Next week we're gonna do widget, but since we've got a bit of time to spare, we can open some of these other blueprints that are here. So Unreal has given us blueprint ceiling light.
I made a silly thing, just experimenting. So if you go onto the BP third person characters, that's the one that we spawn every time. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with that. Like right now, I just made like a little cube that's in front of the character, and every time I click, it spawns an explosion as you're walking around. But it's really easy to do, man. The explosion, I think, is one of the few particle effects that kind of dissipates and deletes itself over time. So it's a nice actor to work with if you want to experiment with that.
Yeah, and that stuff is really easy to work with the emitters.
Mm-hmm.
So this particle
man.
cascade system is really a graph of things happening. You can be really creative with this.
Mm-hmm.
The number of spawns, how big it spawns, over lifespan it has.
I'm trying to figure out how to add an impulse so that way it moves forward. So it's almost like you shot like a rocket that's going to be exploding or something. But it's a lot of fun. It's nice to get back into blueprints. It's been a long time.
So you're getting pretty competent, right? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. It's like riding a bike, gradually getting back on it. It's nice.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb is break it till you make it with this kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
really like get into the details here, start to play with one of these variables one by one, hit compile, save, see what it does. Quick tip, if your engine, if you do start to, and this is maybe for Milo, if you do start playing around with too many things in your editor and it crashes, and then you load the project, every time you load it, it crashes again, I recommend finding your project folder, and you can delete the saved, intermediate, and cache. Usually it's stored in the cache, but if you delete these three folders, you shouldn't have build. Maybe you might have samples in here. No, you might not have samples. You shouldn't have build. This was a test or samples. So you should have a lot less folders here. But if you delete those three, it deletes everything that's stored in the cache, and then you can relaunch your project, and it will create them
Brilliant.
again for you.
Yeah, fresh. Mm.
But be aware, if you have like 500 materials, it will start to recompile all of them. So that takes some time. A quick tip for those who have less competent hardware, and I found this out. Why is it doing that time? I found this out the hard way recently. Is Lumen. We haven't touched on lighting yet, but what we see here now, what's lighting up our scene, when we hit Control L, we can manipulate the sky and it's all its dynamic features. This is something very expensive on the GPU and the CPU, so you can disable that if you wanted to, if you wanted to gain a bit more performance. I've been playing around with some projects recently that I've had to disable it because I've had to deploy it for mobile or web, and the Lumen features were just way too much to deal with. It will become more apparent when you deal with emissive materials and reflections and stuff like that, which are more costly for the performance of the game. So if you go into project settings in your game, and if you can't find project settings, under edit, project settings, and if you scroll down to engine rendering, there basically is where all your, so Milo, any mobile optimization settings you want to put, it's all going to be in here. But generally in here is what the software will use for its global illumination, shadows, ray tracing, VR, all its lighting techniques and all stuff, all the rendering mechanism it uses in the backend. This is where we define it. So under global illumination, where it has dynamic global illumination method set to Lumen, you can set that to none, which will do nothing. Screen space, which is beta, hasn't come, or standalone ray trace, which is reciprocated from Unreal Engine 4. So you can just click none, and same for reflections. You can use screen space or none. We'll dive into that into the lighting tutorial later on, but feel free to set none for reflections as well, because that's also costly. And if you go back to your editor now, mine is stuck for some reason. I can't rotate. No, there we go. Hasn't changed much, but you will notice that you now have a much better performance. I had 25 frames and now I've got 60 because the engine is capping me there. So if you wanted to also check your frame rate, you can also just search frame rate, and you can either use the fixed one or you can use a range. I like to set my max range to like maybe, well, my PC can't handle more than this, but maybe 120, minimum 22.
The scalability trick you talked about last time has made me have a massive improvement in FPS. So I don't need to actually lose on the upper lumen stuff. But maybe everybody's, mileage may vary.
The scalability only works in engine.
Yeah.
So
But,
if you package a game, sometimes if you don't code this stuff in, it won't bring it.
Mhm.
It won't.
understandable.
It won't carry it in. This is all for editor use only.
Makes sense.
So where to find that? Let's say, sometimes it might be the other way around. Sometimes you might be working off a crappy laptop and you want to deploy to a mega beast computer render farm. You can work with low scalability settings, and to do that is, if you go into settings, engine scalability, now it's set to epic, so all our anti-aliasing, shadows, global illumination, reflections are all on very high screen percentage. If you set that to medium, you can see now we lose some quality in shadows. Low is very low, we lose a lot of quality, but we gain a lot more. Why is my FPS not? Coming up. Let's see that. If we can get the price down, can you fix your likes? So that goes back to 60. Alright. Is that a bug? That must be a bug. I wouldn't recommend using a fixed frame rate. but usually the slider works. Usually, just need some playing around with. But yeah, performance is key. Let's set that back to Epic. Cool. So yeah, that was just a quick tip on rendering capabilities for your engine if you're lacking performance, if you're building some very big open world games or maps or architectural visualizations. This essentially is the way to go if you're gonna go down the baked lighting route, which we'll see later on down the line. But this will be very much what you'll require when you do that. No need for Lumen, because Lumen is more for dynamic lighting, less for baked lighting. You can do it, but not so much recommended. Ruthie, any questions? S'il vous plaît. Nice.
Oh, Gucci man, thank you.
Entry level. Right. I'm gonna stop the stream there. Thank you, everybody.